Well, very warm welcome to today's Friday Focus talk on Lord Stewartby's coin cabinet. I'm Jesper Ericsson, Curator of Numismatics, and the Hunterian is guardian of the Lord Stewartby Collection of Scottish coins, which numbers some 6,000 objects. It represents the best collection of Scottish coins ever assembled by a private individual. And to talk more about Lord Stewartby, his collection, and a lovely coin cabinet that we have on display in the Hunterian Museum at the moment until the end of March, it's my very great pleasure to introduce Deborah Stewartby. Deborah, welcome to the Hunterian.
Thank you for asking me.
Oh, we're very pleased to have you. Now, I think, as with all good stories, Deborah, we should start at the very beginning. Can you take us back to Ian's childhood and how and when he became interested in coins?
Yes, as a small boy, he was taken by his mother during the war to the shops in Barnet, and he noticed on the counter of I think it was a butcher's shop, a jar of coins being collected for the war effort, and he happened to notice that one of the coins had two heads. And he asked his mother if he could have it, and the butcher agreed and gave it to him. And that was how it all began.
Fantastic. With a single coin?
With a single coin.
It's amazing, isn't it? So why Scottish coins in particular? What was it about Scottish coins that Ian found so fascinating?
Well, he was a Scot by descent, but during the Battle of Britain, he had to have his appendix out, and while he was recuperating, his father said that he was going to London and that he would bring him a book if he would tell him what he wanted. And he asked for a book on coinage of the British Isles, and his father came back with a book, but for some extraordinary reason it had nothing about Scottish coins in it. So what else was there for him to do but to sit down and write it?
I think that's brilliant. And, well, here it is, the Scottish coinage. Can you tell us the story about it?
Yes, well, he wanted really to write a guide to the Scottish coinage, and he started this when he was a secondary school boy, and it went to the publishers when he was 17. But because he was under 18, his father had to sign the contract for the book, and it was published, I think, in fact, when he was 18 in 1953.
Yeah, fantastic. And what's remarkable about this book is that it stands the test of time. It's still an essential guide to the subject to this day.
And it was revised into that edition in 1967, and at his death, he was still revising it. I think he got as far as Mary Queen of Scots, on which he was inclined to linger. But the paperwork is all here, and you have the papers here in the archive.
Absolutely, we do, in the Hunterian archive. And maybe one day, maybe a third edition. It would be lovely to think, wouldn't it? So, after becoming a published author, what career path did Ian decide on?
Well, he never wanted to be an academic. He knew that when he left university. And so he went, he trained as a banker. And while he was, in the years that he was doing that, he realized that the link between the city and Parliament and government, the links were very poor. So he stood for Parliament in 1974 and was elected in both those elections. Then in 1979, he became Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was Geoffrey Howe. He held 4 further senior ministerial appointments, ending up as Deputy Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. But he suffered a slight injury in 1991, retired from the government, retired from the House of Commons in the election in 1992, and went to the House of Lords, where he was a very active working peer on things like treasure, until Parkinson's meant he could no longer travel, and he retired from the House of Lords in 2015.
So, with such a busy working life, so much on his plate, how on earth did he manage to balance his numismatic interests?
Well, because he wasn't what people would regard as a collector, but a scholar. He would have small packets of coins with him all the time, and he wasn't very convivial. So he was not in the bars and in the long hours in Parliament. He would be at his desk. In fact, he once got caught in a committee meeting writing a paper on the coinage of offer when he should have been paying attention.
Brilliant. Yeah, but it was his form of relaxation.
Yes, absolutely.
His form of
Yes.
being in the office,
Yeah.
doing something different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And I have to ask, how did the two of you meet?
Oh, well, I actually went as an intern to the same bank where he worked. I had identified him. He said he hadn't identified me. But we actually met at a party on a Monday night, and it took him such a long time to propose. We didn't get engaged until the following Sunday.
Honestly.
By which time I'd sort of given up.
Why on earth did he wait so long?
He never had a satisfactory answer to that question.
So, I also have to ask, did you have any interest in coins before you met Ian?
Well, I've thought about this. I was very respectful of them, but numismatics is not a subject you can know a little bit about. I mean, you can know a little bit about stamps, you know about penny blacks and things like that, but you can't know a little bit about numismatics. So as I say, I was very respectful of them. But as I said, he was a scholar, and the coins were everywhere, and I did used to get cross when they got in the Hoover.
I'm not surprised, because he'd go straight in the Hoover to take them back out again.
Well, no, it was my job to wonder why it was making such a dreadful noise. But circumstances meant that I had to become Ian's numismatic executor. Now I know a great deal more. Sadly, since his death, I know a great deal more than I knew during the years of our marriage.
And Ian really was, for many, many decades, at the forefront of numismatic research into Scottish and indeed English coins. And he was very much one of the leading numismatic lights of his generation, I think it's fair to say. So who else did he work with? Who else did he cooperate with? And I suppose the two examples I'm thinking of, we've got Jock and Joan Murray, and then we've got Robert Stevenson. So,
well, Robert Stevenson, who, as you know, was the curator of the, I think it was then called the Royal Museum of Antiquities in Edinburgh, and he first met him when he was a schoolboy. Dr. Anne Robertson and Dr. Donald Bateson here, your predecessors.
Indeed.
And then Jock and Joan Murray. Now they were very interesting because they were both interested in Scottish coins. They had, Joan, who was born Joan Clark, had been at Bletchley and had been briefly engaged to Hunterian. And after Bletchley, she went to GCHQ, where she met Jock, who had been invalided out of the Indian Army. Together, I think she was particularly interested in the coinage of Mary Queen of Scots, wasn't she?
Yes, I mean, the various aspects.
Yes, and so they were very important to him with regard to the Scottish coinage.
And hugely supportive. They collaborated on several projects, didn't they? And just it was the quality of friendship, I think, as well, shone through.
Yes, I mean, Ian said sadly he got to write the obituaries of a number of his numismatic colleagues, including both the Murrays.
No, but it must have been a real privilege as well to have known Jock and Joan Murray and the others, and to be able to make sure that their contribution to numismatics in their lives were properly remembered.
Yes, they were all very respectful of each other, and of course, when he was still a bachelor, they were very kind to him. and often fed him. But the person who really took him under his wing was Christopher Blunt, who was the acknowledged doyen of Anglo-Saxon.
Well, exactly, and this brings us on to our next question, which was, we hold Ian's collection of Scottish coins here at the Hunterian, but of course his had varied interests, and particularly in medieval English coinage.
Yes, that's right. And Christopher Blunt, as I say, was the leading expert on Anglo-Saxon coins, but there was also Professor Philip Grierson, Professor of Numismatics at Cambridge, whose project on the medieval European coinage is still going on, and Ian collaborated with him a lot on that.
Yeah. Ian had a lot of coins, I think it's fair to say. So, how did he go about collecting them? Who did he get them from? Who were his sources?
Well, in the early years, while he was sort of still a schoolboy and an undergraduate, he was given a lot of coins. He was given quite a lot of Scottish coins. He had a small collection which had been meant for him by Philip Goodall, the historian. And Christopher Blunt introduced him to Albert Baldwin and to Patrick Finn at Spink. And they would put things aside for him to look at in his holidays, you know. and then, of course, as he got more established, you know, dealers would know the sort of thing that he would be
absolutely
likely to.
Yes, and he would invariably say yes, I imagine.
He would invariably say yes, yes. And in fact, had I realised what a valuable collection the English collection was going to turn out to be, I would have insisted on more shoes.
Quite right too. So, why did Ian want his collection of Scottish coins to come to the Hunterian?
Because he was a scholar, he was not a collector. And it sounds a silly thing to say, but it was incidental that he had so many Scottish coins. Because, as you know, he would often have maybe 100 of one type.
Absolutely, yes.
Or
more.
Really? Yes. And he knew that it would no longer be possible to build up a collection like that because prices have got so ridiculous. And so he wanted young people or people interested in the Scottish coinage or Scottish history to have access to them. And this was the natural place for them to come.
Absolutely. And we'll come back to that a bit later on. But I also just wanted to turn our attention now to a rather lovely coin cabinet. It's currently on display in the Hunterian Museum until the end of March. So please tell us all about it.
Well, first of all, I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and he would be so pleased. I commissioned it for our silver wedding, and it was made by an arts and crafts designer called Edward Barnsley, who was a friend and colleague of Jensen and the arts and crafts thing. And it's an interesting coin cabinet because Ian collected his coins, kept his coins in little white envelopes,
yes,
sort of that size. So this cabinet has trays designed to take rows and rows of these coins in their envelopes. And that, I believe, is how they're still stored in a similar way.
That's exactly. Yeah. We've kept Ian's way of storing the coins.
We'll come on to the question of the burglary later, but it was very badly damaged in the burglary. But it's been restored, and he wanted it to go with the coins.
Yes. Well, we're very grateful to have it.
It is looking lovely.
Yes. Definitely. And yes, you've just mentioned the really rather awful burglary that took place in 2007, the darker side to the story of the cabinet. And, well, could you tell us more about that and what was lost?
He had brought his Scottish coins. Perhaps I should first say that 2,000 of those early Scottish coins is about that much.
Yes, it doesn't take
something
a lot to
like that.
hold them in your hand.
No, and they were in, I can't remember, half a dozen boxes that looked like after that 8 boxes.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yes,
Sort of
in fact, some of them
rectangular
were after 8 boxes. Yes. And he brought them up to Scotland because they were going to be photographed.
Yes.
And recorded, and unfortunately they were stolen.
And these were 2,000 of the earliest of the Scottish coins, so going back to David I, going back to the 12th century, and then up into the 13th century in Alexander II. So we really are talking about a very rare and historically and nationally important part of Ian's collection that is tragically and unfortunately still currently missing.
Yes, and one of the things that distressed him so much is that very early collection is Scotland's history. I mean, that is what records what Scotland was like in the 12th and 13th century, and that was one of the reasons why he was so distressed.
Yes.
But we are hopeful, the family and I do hope that at some stage they will be recovered. There is outstanding still a reward of £50,000 for their recovery, and I think you plan to say something about how, if people have information, how they can.
No, absolutely.
But they come back. They come back to join the rest of the collection here, when they are found.
Yes, and then the collection can be whole.
And then the collection will be whole, and then it will be the best private collection of Scottish coins ever put together.
Yes, and for the benefit of everyone.
Of everyone, yes.
No, absolutely. After the talk, I'll be on Zoom to answer people's questions, and I'll also show a slideshow of examples of the types of coins that were stolen, so that people can get an inkling of what they look like. Because as we've spoken about before, they're small objects. 2,000 coins sounds like a lot, but really it isn't in volume. And also they may not look like much to an untrained eye. Quite blunted, quite small discs of silver. So yes, I want to be able to give people an idea of what to look out for.
Yes, because I think you told me that in fact, even as far back as 1967, Ian had written something about their slovenly construction or something.
Absolutely, yes. There were dreadful imitations of coins of the English King Stephen to begin with, and the quality wasn't up to much. They did get better though, I have to admit. Going back to the coins that fortunately we do have in the collection here at the Hunterian, ever since they arrived in 2017, since they were gifted, they've been frequently used for displays, also teaching, plenty of research, and here I'd just like to mention also that Ian's collection is being catalogued, and this very handsome volume, the Lord Stewartby Collection of Scottish Coins at the Hunterian, Part 1, James IV, to James VI, by William Mackay, was published at the tail end of last year, and future volumes are planned, and we're very much looking forward to Volume 2, hopefully a bit later on this year.
Well, we're extremely grateful to William for what is really a stupendous piece of work, because although it's called a siligy, it's what you and I would call a catalogue.
Indeed.
And it has beautiful, beautiful illustrations, thanks to you, of the coins that are here. And I think William says that if the stolen coins come back, there will be 6 volumes, is that right?
Up to, absolutely,
yes.
yes. I mean, well, maybe more. We'll have
So you've got 1.5 so far.
No, exactly. And also through the publication of siligates like this, it opens up the collection even more to everyone that would like to either study it, research it, or use it. And given all that we've just talked about, how do you think Ian would feel about his collection of Scottish coins being such a valuable resource?
Well, it entirely fulfills his intention, which was that they should be available for research and for study, or just for interest. I mean, I think 2 of the grandchildren have seen them, 3 of the grandchildren have seen some of them, and you know more. It's not confined to scholars. You know, they're interesting to look at. However, and of course, all the children and grandchildren in the family know the thing about the tortoise and the palm tree on the coin.
Mary Queen of Scots Real. Yes, and if I can just plug something while we're talking about Mary, we are at the moment in the process of researching an exhibition about the afterlife of Mary Queen of Scots, which will open on the Hunterian Art Gallery later this year and feature a rather fantastic array of Mary Queen of Scots numismatic items, including some of Ian's coins.
Ah, wonderful. Well, we will meet a path to your door.
Quite right. So, any questions about tortoises and palm trees, I will probably cover in a future Friday Focus talk.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
So do I, absolutely. So, we're just coming to the end of the talk. So, is there anything that you would like to add or say?
I think I would just like to thank you and your colleagues and the photographers, Rachel, everybody who's been involved in the establishment of Ian's collection in the Hunterian. Although perhaps we should say it isn't actually here, is it? It's at Kelvin Hall.
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
It's not in the place that we're filming today.
No.
It is somewhere else.
Yes, it's somewhere else. Yeah. And reiterate my very strong hope it will one day be whole again.
I couldn't agree with you more, Deborah. It's as we said earlier, those missing coins are an important part of Scottish history and national history, and also of international significance as well. So it's, of course, all of our hope that they will be recovered. And I would just like to add that if anybody does have information about these coins, they should either contact the police on 101, Crime Stoppers if they want to talk anonymously, or indeed anyone is welcome to contact me. And my email address and other details are freely available on the Hunterian website. So let's hope that this dream does come true. It would be lovely to think so. And my very grateful thanks to Deborah Stewartby for the talk today. Hope you enjoyed this segment, and I will be available for questions after this. Thank you very much.
I'm now going to present a short slideshow showcasing examples of the types of coins that are missing from the Lord Stewartby collection. So here are the very first Scottish coins from the 12th century, from the reign of David I. So we're looking at pennies that were struck between about 1136 and 1153. And I'd like to begin this section with a quote from Ian's book, The Scottish Coinage. It was an imitation of the contemporary coinage of Stephen of England that David's coinage was introduced. Not only were the types and the silver standards reproduced, but regrettably also the slovenly workmanship and appalling production. And as Ian suggests, these coins may not look like much. They'll be worn, sometimes very worn, and they're small, as you can tell. And thanks to Deborah for suggesting that I put a £1 coin in to give you a sense of scale. So I put an old Scottish one there. But hopefully you can see we've got a profile bust here facing right, holding a scepter. Can maybe make out a crown and eyes and noses and mouths and chins. But you might not be able to distinguish a face or any lettering at all. And there'll certainly be different shapes, not perfectly round. Similarly on the reverse, it could be very worn. You might not be able to make out details, especially inscriptions, although crosses and pellets usually do show up despite heavy wear. Now the Hunterian doesn't hold any coinage of the next Scottish king, Malcolm IV, who reigned between 1153 and 1165, so I can't show you any. But his coins are very rare and better quality than David's. So we'll move on to the coinage of William I, or William the Lion. So looking at the date range of 1165 to 1214 here. Now, luckily, Lord Stewartby's collection of William coins survived, as they were away on loan at the time of the burglary, and there are 143 pennies in the collection. But I've included them here for illustrative purposes, so that you can see how the design of the penny progressed in Scotland. And these are much better quality compared to David's coinage. And again, just for show, note the change of design of the central short cross, later ones of which are voided, like the coin in the top left and the bottom right. And you've also now got stars appearing in the angles of the quarters. And at this point, it's worth noting that some of the missing coins may not be whole, because in order to make halfpennies and farthings, coins were cut in half or quarters, and this was supposed to be done at the mint. The next monarch is Alexander II, so 1214 to 1249. Just got the one coin to show you here, because not even William Hunter managed to get hold of an example for his collection. And this penny is from the Cuthbert collection. Again, similar to the coinage of the previous reign of William. And here you can see we've got a profile bust facing right, holding a scepter. And quite a small example of a penny this time. On the reverse, still got a voided cross and stars. Moving on to Alexander III now. Fortunately, much of his later coinage was unaffected by the burglary. However, the early coins fell victim. So we're looking at coins that were struck between 1248 and 1250, his transitional coinage, and the first coinage of 1250 to about 1280. But hopefully you can see again, quality has improved. All of the reverses show long voided crosses of the first coinage, but the very early transitional coinage of Alexander III continued to feature the short voided cross. However, the main point about all of these coins is that they are small. And as Deborah pointed out in the film, 2,000 of them wouldn't take up very much physical space. However, 2,000 together in a container would be heavy. So a collection of these coins could be easily hidden. Another part of Lord Stewartby's collection that was affected by the burglary was the later coinage. Indeed, we only hold a small number of Ian's, William and Mary coins here at the Hunterian. And on screen, you can see a small selection of the types of coins that aren't here. They're very different to the early coins. So on the top row, we have coins of William and Mary, so 1689 to 1694. And left to right, we have a 10 shillings, a bawbee, and a bodle, also known as a turner. Middle row, we've got William's sole reign, so William II of Scotland, 3rd of England, 1694 to 1702. And left to right, we've got a 40 shillings, 10 shillings, and a bodle. And the bottom row, coinage of Anne, the very last Scottish coins, so 1702 to 1714. Left to right, crown, a shilling, and a sixpence. And there are around 1,000 unsorted coins in the collection that we're going through at the moment. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my numismatic volunteer, Cameron McLean, for his help with this. We are uncovering some early and later coins, but only a few. So hopefully through this short slideshow, you can see the types of coins we're looking for. All of the early coinage is silver. Later coins will be silver or copper. And if anyone has any information leading to the safe return of these coins, here's how you can help. You can call Police Scotland on 101, although it's a different number if you're calling from outside Scotland, 0141 308 1070. If you want to talk to someone anonymously, you can call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111, or you can contact me at the Hunterian via my email, jesper.ericsson@glasgow.ac.uk. Just before we finish, a reminder that Lord Stewartby's coin cabinet is still on display until the 20th of March 2022. But after that date, from any time and anywhere in the world. People can look up the object on the Hunterian's collection search facility using its accession number, which is GLAHM 40,000. So thank you again very much indeed to Deborah Stewartby and everyone at the Hunterian who helped with today's focus talk and the display of the coin cabinet in the museum. It's always a team effort, involves lots of people, and I'm very grateful to you all. Thank you again.